Half a day, half a day. This is a lecture that I am recording in place of class this week for my free Zoom Chamorro language classes. I apologize. The Guam bus is at the Arbor Day Festival at Jeff's Pirates Cove, and I was on a virtual panel for the Guam International Film Festival, and so was not able to make class. So this lecture is recorded in place of that. And so because this is the start of Arbor Day on Guam, there's a lot of activities related to trees. There's tree plantings, there was a festival, there's public awareness campaigns. Today's class will have sort of a jungle tree-like focus. And so let's get started. And so first off, we're going to start with vocabulary. All right, so remember that in the Dropbox for our class, you will find a number of different handouts. There's years worth of handouts and sheets and lessons in there. And you will find what are called the cosas handouts or the cosas sheets. And so these are sheets, each of them based on a different location, and the vocabulary and sentences there are related to that as well, right? So there's cosas ki halamigima, things, cosas means things that are in the house, cosas ki gimadzuus, things that are at church, cosas ki espetat, things at a hospital, cosas ki batkanaidi, things on a plane. And so today we're going to review cosas ki halamtono, things in the jungle. All right, so repeat after me. Tronku, itronku, itronku siha. Right? And so for each of these, there's the words, and then there's sentences that show you different ways that you can use them, right? So tronku means tree. It is a Spanish word, of course, but there is an ancient word that some people are trying to use more and more for tree, but it's not commonly used at all yet. And so tronku. Aten esti na bonito na tronku. Mega tronco guini. Zahu esti na klasen tronco. All right, moving on, flores. Y flores. Floresija. So as we've talked about in a lesson recently in the Positos class, right? So we've been learning about vowel harmony, but also many Spanish introduced words do not take vowel harmony, right? Tronco and flores are a good example of that. You can say them with vowel harmony if you want to, but always bear in mind that the majority of Chamorro speakers do not say it. So most would say y flores. They would not say y fleres, and they would say y tronco. They would not say y trenco. All right, so of course, flores is a very famous family on Guam. Eno y familiaku. Flores cabeza biba y mas maulik na familia Chamorro. I'm biased. Dispensa zo. But flores, of course, is also flower. There are some theories and some indications that there's an older word for flower, but it is an ancient word or an ancient way of saying it, but it's not commonly used as of yet. Here we go. Pau esti na flores. Gef paugu y flores. Ko unli esti megay na flores. Kof zahu flores siha. Now, remember, if you are practicing with family, especially family members who are more fluent in the language, these sentences are meant to be basic sentences. There's other ways of saying things. There's more advanced ways of saying things. So always remember to, if you have fluent Chamorro relatives or people around you, don't say that, oh no, I have to say it like this because this is the way it is in my sheet. These are meant to guide you. Languages are organic. And so you should definitely reflect the way your family speaks or the way that those around you speak, right? Because this is a classroom, this is a Zoom classroom. And so you want the language living and around you, right? So So don't learn, as they say, Gifino Ingles, don't learn in a vacuum, right? All right, next one. Soda. Sosoda. Manyoda. Manyonyoda. Soda means find, right? Right, find. And so you can see the different variations of it too. Depending on your learning level, you'll recognize these. Soda, like using it like this. Husotda, ilati, right? I found the lati. Using it like this, it's the indefinite object. Manyodadzu, lati. I found a lati. Right? So for those of you who are more Puzitos, you may not understand that distinction yet, but for those of you who are Podza, and especially Tandan Punadera, that's what we've been learning recently. All right, nita practica esti sentencia siya. Ko unsodda ilati. Ti husodda ilati trabiha. Manyodda zulusong. Manyodda zu benadu lokwi. All right, Maulik, next. Odda. Iedda. Right. Odda means dirt, soil. Okay. And then note the vowel harmony there, because that's an Austronesian word. So it definitely takes the vowel harmony. Fresco estina odda. Inedda ikanaiho. Atani edda giorizani tronco. Kogwahagi edda. Hungan. All right, next. Fatsi. Ifatsi. Finatsi. All right. Fatsi, of course, means mud, but fatsi can also mean murky. It can mean sort of clouded too, dirty. You can also use fatsi when you're talking about cooking something like rice. All right. Here we go. Adahi ifatsi. Hugatsa ifatsi. Finatsi sapatosu. Kofinatsi ikatsunesu. Oh, dispenser, that's supposed to be are my pants muddy. Kofinatsi ikatsunesu dispensers are my pants muddy. All right, next. Tonu. Itanu. So note the vowel harmony. Tonu, itanu. Okay. Of course, tanu means land, but tanu can mean a great deal of things. It is a very fundamental Chamorro word. It means land, but it can also mean island. It can mean country. It can mean world. Right. So it is one of the foundational sort of Chamorro words of place. And so here we go. Bonito esti na tonu. Kogwaha tanot mo guini. Taza tanot mami. Taitano zo. Atene tanot guini. And so, of course, the way we pronounce Taitano, right? The Iapuzido, the last name, but if you're saying it Taitanozo, because of course if you're saying it as a last name, it's Taitano. If you're saying it as a expression, as a word, right? You're trying to say it literally, it is Taitanozo, right? Landless, without land. And of course, there's many stories that are told by the Taitanos and others about where they got that name. Again, they should really call them because one of the famous stories is Baan, Familian Baan. So one of their ancestors, Baan, un Ogan, he woke up late one morning, and esta memfifila tori Chamoru paritano, winigidzaguahan. All of the Chamorros were lining up to get land on Guam. And he was last, pues, Tadza Paraguiza, pues, Hafa Itzineletnya, what did he receive? Taitano. All right, otro next. Li'i. Li'i. Manli'i. Manli'i. Now note, this is one of those where there are those who will pronounce it lili'i, manlili'i, right? And so don't and so remember, however you hear it around you, if you hear your family says it one way, it's okay, reflect that. So my lessons are always meant to be a guide, and I always want to emphasize that, because sometimes I have students who will take too seriously the things that I teach. That's why I always emphasize it is a guide. I do not know everything about Chamoru, and I do not know how everybody speaks Chamoru. So I will guide you, and I will tell you sort of simple ways, basic ways to get you started. I will talk about some of the politics of the language, how things are said by different types of people, how to express what you want to express. But for certain things, go with the flow. All right. Okay. Li'i means to see. Now, if you're a Pudzitos level, remember, understanding the difference between the words that all deal with visually processing things is important. Atan, to look at, active. Li'i, to see, passive. Ega, to watch, active, right? Ripara, to observe, more passive. And so understanding the difference between those, right? So li'i is to see something, right? Okay. Ko'un li'i ibabwi. Ahi tiuli'i gwe lohuli'i benodu. Ko'un li'i flores ki tronco. Tiuli'i igwe. All right, next. Patsa. Papatsa. Mamatsa. Mamamatsa. And so patsa means to touch, to touch. Munga mapatsa now. If you have small children or even adult children, you need to know that phrase. Munga mapatsa. No, don't touch that. Patsa esti nalati. Con patsa tronco. Kupapatsa atsu. Go Fino. All right, next. Tatidzi. Tatitidzi. Tatidzi, to follow. To follow. And tatitidzi, following, active, right? Remember, so for those of you who are lapozitos, a little bit younger in the language, remember the doubling of syllables, the repeating indicates that it's active, it's happening, right? So even if you haven't learned it explicitly in class yet, you can be looking out for it and paying attention to when you hear it. All right, so the root word for tatidzi, of course, is tate. So back, behind. Spencer's. All right. Here we go. Koen tatidzi itzala. Tatidzi iladera. Tatidzi tronkonidzok siha. Tatidzi isadok. All right. Next, paluma. Ipaluma. Paluma siha. All right. Bird. Paluma from Spanish. There are some who, now Chamorros had names for all their birds, of course, but some say that the word gekbu is the word for bird if before the, because gekbu means flyer, something that flies. All right, there's other Spanish words for bird that have also come into Chamorro. Koguaha paluma siagi halam tono. Timega na paluma gi halam tono paugo. Edzigi un paluma. Edzigi un paluma. Again. Get used to that. That's an important word. Etsugi. There it is. There it is. Etsugi. Etsugi. Right? Etsugi paluma. Etsugi spaceship. All right, here we go. Next. Oh man, I don't know. I shouldn't have included this one. Ayade kulebla. Ikulebla. Kulebla siha. Snake. And so, of course, you know, ayade. Oh, go from that messy, not tristina na historia. Historia ni kulebla winning gidzaguahan. Such a tragic story. But anyways, dispensa, let's keep going. Koguaha kulebla siaguini. Hungan lo man maigui kulebla sigi durante ni haani. Tidzahu kulebla siha. Wenti tidzan mizu kulebla siha. All right, next. I won't talk anymore about that, but oh, Benny Dosuna Tatazo. I'm having a proud father moment because they had a Fenhita decolonization, Manhoben, Youth for Decolonization conference at the Guam Museum this week, organized by the Commission on Decolonization. And so they had the students do creative works. So learn about decolonization and then whatever creative form or outlet they wanted, whether poetry, music, or painting, they had the chance to try to create something to express what they feel about the issue of decolonization. And Bani Dosuzunai Sasi Sumahi. Sumai painted a cocoa bird, the Guam rail killing a brown tree snake. That was so cool. That's all the organizers for the conference looked at it and said, man, Edzwe Mas Kaleng, punk rock nine class in Panenta. That's the most punk rock painting here out of all of the out of all of the paintings. Okay, Spencer. So all right, here we go. Tautomotna. 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 Spirits, ancestral spirits. Some people use Tautomotna to refer to like ghosts, and actually we're going to talk about that later. But they are meant to be sort of the spirits of the ancestors of the Chamorro people. Although there are those who say that there are Tautomotna who are attached to other races that have lived on Guam. It's an interesting sort of thing. I love to talk about that. For those of you who are patrons for Fanatsu, you know that a bunch of our exclusive content on Patreon is all Tautomotna related. So Gofzahu like Sumangan Estina Tautomotna na historia siya. All right, here we go. Manliidzu Tautomotna. Mangi Tautomotna. Ko babay Tautomotna. Ahi Tibabagwe. Tautomotna. I always remember one of my friends who grew up on Guam in the 60s, and they had a at that time the school system was not segregated by military civilian, and so the kids of officers on Guam went to public school, and so my friend said that they had a white kid from the States who was going to school with all these Chamorros and Filipinos, and he came up to sort of a bunch of local kids one day, and he was like, "Is it true? Is it true, y'all? The stories I hear about the Tatomatas?" Dispensers are not selling it up. The Tautomotnas makes it sound like it's some sort of mutant vegetables that are wandering and roaming around Guamstone. Goes the Tautomotnas. Anyways, all right. Finally, Tinanum. Itinanum. Tinanum siha. All right. Tinanum, of course, is plant. The root word is tonum, which means to plant something. The verb, tinanum, is the noun. Gofbedi tinanum siya giholom tonum. Hafe na anya estina tinanum. Gaigesti na tinanam gigimaho. All right, Maulik. Okay, we are done with our first part for today. So, as I always emphasize, that those sheets are there that you can practice with, but remember that you can always make your own sheets like that. You can always make your own simple cosas gi halami gimahu, things in my house. Put down the vocabulary words you use regularly and some sample sentences that you're gonna, that are connected to things that are regularly gonna happen, right? It's a great way to practice. All right, so pari segundo na parte, there's gonna be 3 parts for today. For the next part, we have a story. This story is Historian Inidzuk. Okay, Historian Inidzuk. And so this is part of the 1970s, part of the bilingual bicultural program at the Guam Department of Education. They published a number of different primers. Many of them are hard to get nowadays. I'm going to see 1973. So Tininias Jesus Barcinas, a very important person in the 20th century in terms of Chamorro language revitalization. Gof Caballero na Tautomotna, Rogelio Faustino, who was a well-known illustrator for the Chamorro Studies program in GDOE. And so, Historia ni Nizuk, this is the legend or the story of the coconut, a very important legend in Guam history for Chamorro culture. Many people are familiar with this, and there are slightly different versions to it. And so this is one that was popularized, though, in the 1970s in the public school system. All right. Nihita. All right, Nego and Ratu. All right. Okay, dispensa zo. All right, Nihita Tsoguyasti. Let's start this story now. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to go word for word just because Gofanakuya story, it is quite a long story, and I want to make sure we get through it. Pasnita tutuhon. Gi atmaman dispensa zo. Gi atmamam na tiempo estaba gidza Guam un centaculo na familian Chamoru, itata inana zani haganiha, siha y manakilo manafran yatsote. All right. A long time ago on Guam, there was a very elite or esteemed Chamorro family, the father, the mother, their daughter. They were the elite or the high people known as the Atsote. Gos Maulik Matsotsui Tata, Guiza Mananaga Atsu, para Late de Contoro para Atupak Zan Escoplo, right? And so the father was very good, very hard worker. He's the one that would, so Taga, he is the one that would sort of chop the stones to make lati as well as other tools like sling stones. Inana gostomtom mamfok hatutufok I pexi pago zeni pexi lemai para tapis, right? And so the mother was very, so Tomtom is wise, very good at weaving. She wove the fibers of the pago tree, the wild hibiscus, and the lemai, the breadfruit tree, for aprons. So terita esta y haganiha haoski maulik na costumbre ni nananya zenitatanya gos magwaidzagwi. All right. Their daughter was a young woman. She followed the good customs, the good ways of her mother and father. She was very much beloved. Gos magwaidzagwi. Patutuhon mo malolongo isoterita zagos tristi. Mampiniti tautosya mandanye famalawan para umaespia hafat setnotnya. Right? And so she began to get ill, the young woman, and it was very sad. She was very sad. The people around her were hurting. The women came together to try to figure out itetnotnya, what was her illness, what was her sickness. Ma'oi soterita. Haagang si tatanya za hafaisin tatasya tata. Sinya mohon suli idzu nu adzuna fruta I mahetuk zegaitsigu na kalang mamis na hono. The young woman was thirsty. She called to her father and she asked, Father, would you be able to bring to me tsuliidzo, that fruit which is hard, but it has it has juice inside of it, which is sweet, which is like sweet water. Itata haageng ilalahan ni sengsung, hasangani nui malagui haganya. Bayan fanhano za inispiha adzuna fruta, ilakniha ilalahi. So the father called the men of the village. He told them what it was that his daughter wanted. We will all go and we will look for that fruit, the men said. Timasotda adzuna fruta, pues matai maoi soterita. Maadotna igima nui manadan flores, zamangante tautasya ni manamahaleng na kanta. They were not able to find, the fruit was not found. And so the young woman died of thirst. The house was adorned by a great abundance of flowers. The people sang sort of longing songs. The people also sang longing songs. All right. Mahafari matai gitakilo na sabana, simana di kada deha utsan za tisinima bisita inaftan. So the young woman, the deceased, was buried in a high hill, and for one week it rained every day, and the grave inaftan tisinima bisita could not be visited. And I pumari itsan manhano itatani matai zani tauto isengsung paru manatatsu ilati. Finatina sitata ilati pari naftani haganya. When the rain stopped, the father of the deceased and the men of the village went so that they could natatsu ilati, right? And so people sometimes ask, what's it called? Oh, what does fanatsu? What's the root word? And that's it, tatsu, to rise, to stand. So manatatsu ilati. So they made it stand up, to make the lati stand up. This lati was made by the father for the grave of his daughter. Mansen manman and I'm aliin na doku and tinanum ginaftan, hafesti na tinanum, todus man mamaisen. Mamaisen, dispensa. Todus man mamaisen. They were all amazed, and when they saw that there was something growing, there was a plant growing on the grave. What is this plant? All of them were asking. Menguento si man malate, ilagniha, adai sagay paktu esti na tinanam, debidu mapulan, sa zangensinya makto puesinya lokui malingo. Nihi zatahatso and lansu para liheng zatapulan esti na tinanam, ilagniha itautau. So the wise men, or the smart people, they talked, and they said, watch out, take care, because this gaipaktu has magic. This plant has magic, and it must be watched over, because if it can arrive, if it can come, that means it can be lost as well. So let's build a ranch here, parelihing, for sort of sanctuary to keep it safe, or for a shelter, and we will watch over this plant, the people said. 5 años di mapupula ni tronco. Esta donklo zamanoksa podong ungafo. So for 6 years, the tree was watched over, taken care of. And it was already big, and it had already grown fruit, manoksa podong ungafo. And one of the young coconuts from the tree had fallen down. Mahoke igafo zanay mazengzong mashente nagwaha tsao gisanhalam. So the young coconut was collected, and then when it was shaken, it was felt that there was something, moving inside. There was water inside of it. Manogui amko na maugas umaieng za umaeti eno na tineksa este kita li'i hafat sao. All right, so the The old chief, he ordered that it should be peeled back, right? And so there's two words there, maiing and maeti, for peel back. The first, maiing is the first layer, and then maeti is to remove. You can remove it with your with your teeth. That they should sort of peel back the layers of the fruit until they can see what is sort of shaking inside, what is the splashing around inside. Anoki mahetuk na sanhalo mitineksa. Man maatnyo itataw sa maliin na gay mata, gay guiings, and gay patsut. Kalang gay gaputulu I ineteniha. All right. And so when the inside of the fruit, when it was visible, it was hard. They were afraid because what they saw was it had something that had a face, it had a nose, it had a mouth. It even seemed to have hair. Mahatsa otrulehing para inatman man na fruta. Mafatanasi un lamasa za mapotloy fruta para uma adora. And so they erected another shelter for this amazing fruit, and they made for it a table, and they put it there so that they could adore it. Lumina un taloani sumenduru za sumenanaku man opupi tautogi hilotanu za mangosluhan. Gumalilik itineksa esta ifina manyanya. Inina ni atdaw mumaipi za después mafak. An earthquake came one afternoon. It was very strong and it lasted for a very long time. And opop means to lie in your stomach. The people all laid down on their stomachs on the earth, and they were very afraid. So gumalilik rolled, the fruit rolled until fina manyanya, until the area where it was soft, the soft ground. Inina ni adaw, it was illuminated by the sun, it became warm, and then it cracked. Humare linaw, taigui tineksa gilamasa, masotda gi hilotano gifina manyanya. Man maatnya itautaw sa maliin na itineksa hababa ipatsotnya, sa aanok man sen apaka na nifan, malii lokwi nagwahanam gisanhalam itineksa. The earthquake stopped, all right? The fruit was no longer on the table. They found it on the ground, on the soft ground on the earth. The people were afraid because they saw that the fruit had now opened its mouth and they could see white teeth inside of it. They also saw that there was water inside of the fruit. Imagasi manamko haageng itatani matay na sotera zaileknya hago ni tatat sagifan gumimen ni hanam itineksa. The chief, he called the father of the girl who had died, and he said, "You who are the father, try to drink this, the water from the fruit." The father said, "No, I cannot drink that. Maila guahu by gimen ileknya inana. Come and I will drink it," said the mother. Ileknya tatlo inana zengin benenu hanam estina tineksa za hapununzu. Nadanya ham ginaftan zanidufunta hagahu. Humalumzu naginin as zuus estina Trongkon Pinu. The mother said again, if this water is poison in this fruit and it kills me, unite me and my daughter in the grave. I believe, or I think, that this palm tree comes from God. Hagimen inana itsigo itineksa haipi fruta za hakanu isensen gosmangi tineksa estinapatma ileknya inana. Desde adzuna champu matungo na sinya manafensetbi I diferentes na patisia ginidzuk. The mother drank, the juice from the fruit. She split open the fruit and she ate the meat inside. So delicious, the fruit of this palm, the mother said. From that time on, They knew that they could make use of the different parts of the nizuk, the coconut. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that you enjoyed that. There's a lot that you can unpack from that story. You can compare and contrast it with other cultures. You can see influences from colonization in that, but it's still a very interesting story. There's still a lot. And if you would want me to ever do like a Fanatsu Secret Guam podcast focusing on that legend, I'd be more than happy to, because there's a lot of interesting stuff there. All right. For the last part here, what we are going to do is we're going to listen to a song. And so Nanga Zabe Fanui Hamzo, I'm going to share with you now the words to the song. Some of you may be familiar with the Delgado brothers. So the Delgado brothers were one of the few bands that in the 1960s was regularly performing Chamorro music. Prior to sort of Johnny Sablan and his sort of pioneering recording of Chamorro songs and releasing of albums, the Delgado brothers, like the Chatfris brothers, like Mike Laguatnia, excuse me, these were musicians or groups that were regularly performing Chamorro songs in public. Lots of people were singing Chamorro music and songs at sort of private, for amongst their friends, to themselves, and so on. But the Delgado brothers were one of the few that were out there performing for parties and events prior to Chamorro music being recorded in the late 60s and 70s. They released a number of albums as well. And so this song called Tautomotna comes from the album Parasiwan, in which they used a number of songs that their late brother, the Delgado brothers are five brothers, and one of their brothers, Juan, had passed away after moving back to Guam from living in the States for more than 20 years. And so they recorded several of the songs that he had written in Chamorro. And so let's listen to this, and you can see the words here to the song. All right, Nanga Nroto, Zabetutu Honesti.
Dia gilantu motoson yunalahi donkuludan metku ai hafna bumyahi Tautomotna ai lawi mangatun malagwatu ifegun atani namami persagoti ihaton Tautomotna Jesus, umagan ay nana, tumatati si Jose, at tugong isa pa na Tautomotna. Chatonyo si Francisco, malago otro direksyon, sumaga to Italo, tiyo tumuto na intensyon, Tautomotna. I have found that lohi kubatiha. Kufluhantu, story modonya. Ay, bumbu corazon, una matona. Tautomotna. Kufluhantu, story modonya.
Tahuazu. Zawi Tunada ni Delgado brothers, Imanietlun Delgado. I love their sound. It's always I was not alive in the 60s or the 70s, but it always sort of for me it reflects sort of an older Chamorro experience, you know, and a lot of people that I interviewed and spent time with, and so it reminds me of Manamko. Zanina Magov Junoana. And so this is an interesting song. It is meant to be fun, but there's some stuff there that we can unpack about it. But let's look at the words too. All right. So we're gonna say I'm gonna say the lines, and then I'll give you some time to repeat after me. All right. So we talked about Tautomotna earlier. So the song is about the Delgado brothers at the ranch, and they encounter somebody that they call a Tautomotna. And what's really interesting, what I love about this is not like the Tautomotna, like just the Tautomotna as like a zombie, like that Destination Truth show portrayed it, or just Tautomotna as like ghosts. But for many Chamorros, Tautomotna were sort of real things that you could talk to, you could interact with, you had to be very respectful of, you should be, you know, you should be afraid of sometimes, but you could also just interact with them too. And so I find this song to be kind of interesting because it's straddling a number of different ways that Chamorros felt about the Tautomotna. And as you know, one of them was just that it was something to be scared of, like a ghost story, like some spooky jungle spirits. But at the same time, this song also shows that Tautomotna have their own ways about them, their own logic, their own voice even. And that's one thing that I like about it. But all right, need that then. So here we go. Un día gilanzo, matu extraña na lahi. One day at the ranch, a strange man came. Donkulu zanmet gut, I hafa na bumiahi, Tautomotna. All right, big and strong. Where is he headed to? Where is he going? Right, biahi is time, but it's time instance, but it also can be used for travel, trip, right? So bumiahi, right? Hailaw imangatsong malagwatu gifegon. Right? He's looking for his friends. He went malagwatu gifegon. He went over there to the stove. Haata ni nat mommy pasagoti I hatson Tautomotna. He looked at our food, and then he held on to the torch. Now, I don't know exactly what they meant by Hatson, but if you have been coming to my classes for a while, or if you're familiar with Tautomotna stories, of course, there is the torch, oftentimes asut, I Hatson. There is the story of the torch that Tautomotna carry, that they place to mark areas where they are at. And so it is an interesting inclusion, because for some people, that's the sort of their experience with the Tautomotna is seeing the torch. And then either being respectful and not going near it, or passing the torch, and then sort of something bad possibly happening to them. Ailuhan ham in gofatan satadzanai in li'i. So Ailuhan ham, oh, we're afraid. In gofatan, we really looked at it. We're like staring at it. Satadzanai in li'i, because we'd never seen anything. We'd never seen something like this. I luhan ham in ziti inat mami. I luhan ham. We're afraid. In ziti nat mami. We threw away our food. Again, zuti of course means throw away, but in ziti, with the vowel harmony. Malalago si Jesus, umagang ay nana. Malalago si Jesus, umagang ay nana. Okay. And so Jesus is running. He shouted, "Ay nana, oh mother. Tumatati si Jose hatugung isabana." Hungen. And Jose is behind. Now, tumatati can have I hear people use it in different ways, but sort of it's in the back, following, right? He's either staying back or he's following behind. Hatugung isabana. He charged for the mountains or the hills. Si Antonio, si Francisco, malago otro direction. Antonio and Francisco, malago otro, they ran in another direction. Sumagazugi talo, tihutungu izonya intention. I stayed in the middle because I did not know what his intentions are. Umagangzu, tumangesu, tazasinya hutsokwe. I, hihud gui, estranyo na lahi, Tautomotna. Umagangzu, tumangesu. I shouted, or I called out, I cried, I can't, I can't do anything. I, hihud gui, estranyo na lahi. Oh, he's closer, he's close. This strange man, this Tautomotna. Hagoti kanaihu, ileknya nihi tahano tati. Guatu gilansotmo, I hafahaw na lahi, kubat dihao. I love that. He held my hagoti kanaihu. He held my hand. Ileknya nihi tahano tati. He said, "Let's go back. Guatu gilansotmo, there to your ranch. I hafahaw na lahi." What kind of man are you? Kubat dihao, you're a coward. That's what I love. The Tautomotna is not like some like shape which is like screaming like a jump scare. The Tautomotna is like looking for his friends, right? And all these guys run away when he appears, and he like is following them, and he grabs one and he says, "Hey, let's go back to your ranch. How come you're such a scaredy cat?" Gofluhanzu, extraño y modunya. Ay, bongbong corazón, uno na matanya. All right, Gofluhanzu, I'm very afraid. Extraña y modunya. His appearance is very strange. Ay, bongbong corazón. So bongbong corazón, heart beating, my heart is pounding. Uno na matanya. He only has one eye. Cyclops na Tautomotna. Cyclops na Tautomotna esti. And so Hungen, a fun sort of song. A fun sort of song for this. And it straddles, on the one hand, it does portray the Tautomotna as sort of like these frightening spirits, but on the other hand, it also portrays them as being these engaging spirits, right? That you don't just, they're not there to like, they're not ghouls just to frighten you, right? They're not sort of fodder for horror movies necessarily, although there are some Tautomotna that are more appropriate for that. This is more sort of like somebody who lives in the jungle, who hasn't accepted the modern ways, somebody who lives off of the land, some ancient person, more so in that vein. Love it, Zawisty. All right, and so that is it for this pre-recorded Chamoru lesson for all of my students. Now, I wanted to give you, I wanted to give you a Chamoru saying. So I'm going to type it up here. All right. And so because it is sort of tree related, I was looking for a Chamoru saying related to trees and stuff like that. And so I do remember one, and it's something which definitely is influenced by the Spanish. But this year, former speaker of the Guam legislature, Joaquin Arriola, a political pioneer in Guam's history, elected many times to the Guam legislature, served as the speaker of the Guam legislature. I had the chance to interview him last year, spend several afternoons talking to him. And I remember him, he gave this sort of Chamorro saying that he had been in trouble before the war. Sa Gifenotnya kalangagogwat nine sutero. He was, as a young man, he was always kind of breaking the rules or not obeying, not doing what he was supposed to. And so he was taken in front of one of the Chamorro judges. One of the Chamorro judges, who worked for the naval government before the war, sort of because he was in trouble. And so this judge, kind of spoke Chamorro to him and these other kids who had gotten in trouble. And so he looked at each of them and he said, Trongkon Pinu, Tunas Hulo, to each and every one of them. And so what, of course, that means is the pine tree grows straight up. Trongkon Pinu, Tunas Hulo. And so it was a saying that was meant to invoke sort of like, be good, obey, grow straight up. If you don't, you're going to grow in weird ways. Who knows which direction you're going to go? And so Pinu, of course, is pine tree. I mean, there are pine trees on Guam, but they're not called Pinu, right? So this is something which was influenced from the outside, but you could change it in some ways if you wanted to. You could say, for example, Trongkon Gagu Tunas Hulo, if you wanted to, because that's the pine tree. The gagu is the ironwood. It grows straight up. Right? A lot of other trees don't grow like straight up in that way, but you could shift it around if you wanted to. I mean, if you said Trongkon Ifit Tunas Hulo, it might carry a similar meaning if that's what you wanted. But this is something that I wanted to share because he did pass away this year, and I appreciated the time I got to spend with him. And I love it and the thing is that for when I was talking to him, I asked him if he could do the interview in Chamorro, and he said it would be difficult. He could speak Chamorro, absolutely, but he said it would be difficult for him to do the whole interview in Chamorro. So he spoke largely English, but then when he would be remembering conversations that happened, before the war or during the war or after the war, he would always slip into Chamorro to recount what people had said. And so this was something that he, because he was such a naughty child and he was remembering sort of how he got in trouble and the deep voice of the Chamorro judge, Trongkon Pinu, Tunas Hulo. So I always remember that sort of the gravity that he brought to that when he shared it with me. All right. Enoha parapago. Sidrus masi no hamsa todas. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I will see you all next week as we continue Chamorro class. Adios. Esto otro viaje. Pues adios.